Hello, you're watching TVP World Talks. I'm Ina Shravinsky. In Russia, a country whose information space is now being subjected to an unprecedented crackdown on dissenting voices, a murmur of dissatisfaction can still be heard beneath the surface. Citizens of cities such as Tuapse, home to a massive refinery complex, which was recently turned into an apocalyptic set piece by Ukrainian drone strikes, are complaining of a cover-up, saying nothing is done to save them from the fallout. Some even say it's because Russia's air defense is preoccupied elsewhere, protecting Vladimir Putin's private mansion. Joining us here to discuss where those events could lead to is Reuben F. director of the Asia Research Center at the Casimir Pulaski Foundation. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about this. Russia has recently introduced an even greater degree of surveillance online, basically restricting access to communications services, websites, allowing the FSB to eavesdrop essentially on what is going on the internet to an even greater extent. And yet there is something going on, right? And it's related to these recent disastrous events in a couple of places where industrial facilities are located. Can you tell us more about this whole situation?
This is fairly widespread now, and yes, the Russians have instituted restrictions on use of the internet and blocking websites. It's the sort of thing that would do the North Koreans proud, or the Chinese as well. But what's happened are the bombardments of these oil facilities, which have just turned into major disasters for some cities, particularly Tuapse, which is on the Black Sea. And people there openly complained of, they say this is like Hiroshima without the radiation. They talk about the black rain of oil coming down from the sky because the entire facility literally went up like a volcano. That's how it was described. And this went on for days. This was not a one-day event. There were 4 strikes on the facility, and in between what there was of the Russian response tried to put the fires out unsuccessfully. And there was a lot of rage on the part of, it still is, on the part of the locals there and in other places, but particularly in Tuapse, because number one, they were saying, where's our mayor, where's our governor, where's the emergency services, the MCHS ministry, and then at the same time, Putin was on television telling the entire country that there's actually nothing really going on that really threatens this city. And all of these images that you're showing now, and dozens of others, and I don't know how much, I've got footage from everywhere, none of this is shown anywhere on any of the Russian television channels which the government has the ability to control. It's like it's not even taking place. It's very typical dictatorial style. There's no bad things happening in our country.
So you've mentioned 4 consecutive attacks. Now, this is something new, isn't it? Because Ukraine actually did attack a variety of facilities across Russia before, some of them multiple times, but not in such a quick succession. Does this perhaps point towards the country's air defense system becoming less and less capable of actually countering these threats?
Well, it's less and less capable all the time because, number one, the Ukrainians keep destroying parts of it, including a key radar station, which was wiped out recently. Number two, the Ukrainians keep learning about how to evade the air defense or what kind of signals they can use to jam them. I mean, the Ukrainian military is probably the greatest learning organism in the world right now. And then thirdly, the air defense can't be everywhere in all places all at once, and some of it, as you mentioned in your prologue there, some of it has been siphoned off to be placed around Vladimir Putin's palatial residence at Valdai. At the beginning of the year, there were around 10 of these air defense batteries placed up on high towers around the facility, and now there's 27 of them. And to put that into perspective, there's only 70 of these kinds of aircraft emplacements around the city of Moscow, a metropolitan area of 20 million people. And Putin has 27 of them around his palace up on the lake, where he can be away from all of this death and destruction. And people know this. People speak openly about this. Now, word is getting out. And I've been watching all of the Russian Telegram channels, Instagram, internet-based news reporting. I've been watching all of this stuff for years. I've never heard the type of absolutely poisonous, absolutely furious dialogue that I've seen in the last 2 weeks. This is causing a real awakening among people. I'm not saying that Russia's going to collapse tomorrow or anything, but the situation is changing from what it was before, and I don't think it can change back.
So now, what do you think would it take for there to be a momentum towards some kind of political upheaval, perhaps? Because we also do know that there is a great variety of both individuals and groups who are becoming involved in this ongoing criticism of the authorities. Now, these also include essentially the zealots, the pro-war bloggers who have been complaining about shutting down Telegram because this affects troops on the ground. Things like that. So these are people sometimes even more radical than Putin himself. Meanwhile, of course, much of the Russian opposition is in exile, still active, but doesn't really have a direct influence there. So how would you assess the current situation? And perhaps what are the prospects for this spilling over even further?
Well, no one has to believe me when I say that I think Russia could reach a very real crisis point, because you have members of the Duma, the Russian parliament, literally on the floor of the parliament saying we could easily be facing a 1917 type situation in the very near future, as in when the troops decided they didn't want to fight anymore and they came home. And by the time they got finished with what they were doing, there was no longer a tsar. There's what would it take? These kinds of upheavals, they only require a small spark. It's always that straw that breaks the camel's back type of a dynamic. So, but obviously, right now, the Ukrainian war on Russia's oil generating capacity and the ability to export is hurting the Russian military's ability to supply its own needs, as well as the Russian state's ability to generate the revenue, which it depends on. It depends greatly upon oil and gas revenue to provide the monies it needs to keep funding this war. And the war is successively consuming more funding and more people than Russia has the ability to keep supplying, to keep replacing.
So now we also, of course, have the question of assessment of how Russia is doing, really, because you're mentioning a certain strain put on the economy and the war machine. On the other hand, you have analysts raising alarm, saying that Russia could potentially lash out if cornered, or that it could have a plan intended to divert the attention of NATO allies, perhaps through some limited military operation. Do you think that these two tendencies are mutually exclusive? Or perhaps is the Russian leader's increasing paranoia actually driving him to some desperate measures? Could this still happen?
Well, it's not only his paranoia. I'll address the last point first. It's not only his paranoia which is driving desperate measures, but he appears increasingly. I would say he's getting close to the, sometimes when he speaks, when you hear him talking, he almost sounds like Joe Biden in that presidential debate after which he was removed from the Democratic ticket. And some of these appearances of him publicly have him saying things where there's a Russian speaking person who introduces the clip before you see it, and they say, I want to emphasize, this is not made up. This is not AI generated. This is actually Putin talking. And if you actually understand what he's saying, please leave it in the notes, because we don't understand it. That's one thing. The second point is, yes, could Russia lash out? Could they try and do something against one of the Baltic states? Could they try to cause some trouble somewhere? Well, yes, they could, but that would mean war with NATO. And if they had the wherewithal to do anything significant, I don't dispute the fact that Russia could try and fall back and regroup and rearm and then be back in a few years And a number of countries, including Germany, are very seriously looking at that possibility and planning for it. But right now, as of today, I mean, Russia's been trying to take the Donbass for 10 years, and they still can't do it. And you really have to ask what sort of resources do they have left now that they could do anything other than continue this grinding, absolutely almost positional warfare on the front lines where nothing moves but tens of thousands of people get killed every month.
So do you think that Ukraine could regain initiative, for example, by introducing new weapon types like ballistic missiles, which are about to be introduced by one of the private sector military companies, which has already been manufacturing long-range drones responsible for many of the successful attacks? Ukraine is also working on its own air defenses, wants to become more independent from its partners in both Europe and the United States. But would that be enough to turn the tides of this war?
It would be enough to quite probably cause the Russians to say, okay, we have to stop this. And there are people, there are officials in the Russian government who won't use their names, but they are speaking to Western media. They're speaking to outlets like the Washington Post. And they're saying, look, there's a very real sense here that this has gone on too long. And the longer it goes on, the worse it gets. It doesn't get any better. We've got to figure out some kind of an exit. And no one would have said that a year ago. I mean, I just look back on this. I mean, I look back, 2023, what did I hear? Oh, Ukraine can never win. Oh, the Russians have too many people. They've got too many resources. They've got too much land. They're unbeatable, on and on and on. And look at it today. Would anybody say that today? Would anyone say that Ukraine is on their back foot? Would anyone say that the Ukrainians have no chance? I mean, I don't discount the Ukrainians' ability to do anything. They've shown incredible innovation. And when this war is over, they will have the most powerful army probably in the entire world and the most innovative defense industrial base.
Do you think that this is an opportunity that the West might be missing out on? We've had recent news of certain disputes between the Trump administration on the one hand, its European allies on the other hand. The war with Iran is also preoccupying Donald Trump and his administration to a great degree, even depleting some of the resources. Do you think there is still something that could potentially encourage the Trump administration to abandon the idea of trying to reach the sort of settlement with Moscow? Some people even call it appeasement. But whatever we call it, there has been this sentiment that the US might actually lean on heavier on helping Ukraine instead of trying to broker a peace deal whereby one of the sides, i.e. Moscow, really isn't negotiating in good faith at all.
Well, yeah, Moscow's never been negotiating in good faith at all. But what I would say is that, and I want to emphasize, these are not my words. These are words of people who understand what's happening very well, and they're observing this. This is from multiple individuals I've spoken to. But number one, the West in general and America in particular are squandering a very, very great opportunity to learn from the Ukrainians, to learn about what they're doing. Most of the other countries in the West have forgotten how to fight in the present day, and Ukraine has changed the way that warfare is conducted in many respects, and countries are not capitalizing on that. On the defense industrial side for the U.S., this is a very sad story because all of these food fights with the European countries and talking about getting out of NATO and deciding, no, we're not going to send any more free weapons to Ukraine. The Europeans have to buy them. So what that's done is that has caused the sales of European-made weapons to increase. There's a 150 aircraft order to Saab for the Jazz 39 aircraft for Saab in Sweden, and a 100 aircraft order for the Dassault Rafale in France by the Ukrainians, but no orders for American aircraft. And this constant drumbeat about constantly sort of downgrading Europe. People are telling me now that this could cost American industry the sale of as many as 100 F-35s. And when you delete that many aircraft from the production cycle, the prices start to get very, very punishing for the manufacturers and for the people who buy them. So
the direct consequences of that. Unfortunately, I have to park our conversation there. We have run out of time. But hopefully, we'll have an opportunity to discuss these developments further down the line. Reuben F. Johnson was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, sir.
And I'm Jonasz Lewiński. You're watching TVP World. Please stay with us for more latest news, updates and commentary.